Good evening, everybody. We ask that everyone please take a seat. We are about to begin.
Hello. Let me start by saying good evening to each of you. I have to make a proclamation that I have never had to make in front of a microphone before. My voice is not as strong as it usually is. So I ask for just a little bit of grace when I'm communicating with you on this evening. I am honored to be here, and we have a litany of special guests and stakeholders who are here on today. But I just want to start first, and the team's gonna kill me already. She done abandoned the agenda already. I want to start with the rules of engagement on today. For anyone who is present here, who feels passionately, as we all have a right to, about whatever perspective it is that you have about this agreement, we want you to know that there have been, and will continue to be multiple vehicles for you to be heard. But on tonight, this is an opportunity for me as mayor of the city of Philadelphia to share this historic agreement that I am proud to present to you on this evening. I do want to say in advance that if at any time anyone, and this is really because this meeting is being live streamed, and we also have stenographers who are recording our notes so that we can have a transcript of everyone who spoke and everything that occurred on tonight. But the minute that anyone attempts to disrupt this meeting, you will be escorted out of the, we will pause for the benefit of the viewing public. We will pause, we will go on mute. You will be escorted out of the room, and then we will proceed, because the residents of the city of Philadelphia deserve to hear about what we have negotiated on their behalf. With that being said, I want to acknowledge some of our attendees who are present here on today. And first, I want to say to the Chambers of Commerce, and this includes our African American Chamber, Hispanic Chamber, and the LGBTQ Chamber. Thank you for being here. Organized Labor, SEIU, the Building Trades, Carpenters, IBEW, and all of the others. The Black clergy is present here on today. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here. The NAACP, Daisy Cruz from SEIU, Ryan or either Butch Bennett will be speaking on behalf of the trades. James Hocker, the Carpenters, Mark Lynch, Lynette Sutton from Girls Concrete, Diane Monroe, Community Stakeholder, Maxwell Brown, Community Leader, Regina Hairston from the African American Chamber, David Katz, Community Stakeholder, and Ed Gross from the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association. With that being said, I want to start by saying to each of you that we are here tonight to talk about an historic agreement that my administration has reached with the Philadelphia 76ers for an arena to be built in Center City. I want you to know that on tonight, we're going to go through the presentation, and you're going to hear the entire presentation. There should be some staffers who are around with 5x7 cards. If while someone is giving their presentation, you have questions, we want you to write them down. But we're going to let everyone make their presentation, and then you can ask questions. We'll get some questions from the press, but we may get some questions from you in the audience. I want you to know that we're not rushing to leave here on tonight. We're going to make sure we get through the entire agenda, and we're going to hear from everyone. With that being said, I want you to know that I truly am proud that having made this decision and negotiated an agreement that will definitely ensure that our Sixers are staying home right here in Philadelphia where they should be. Now, I want you to know that I will transmit the related legislative package to the City Council of Philadelphia for its consideration where it must be approved. We're also going to be working very closely with Council Member Mark Squilla, who is the district council person for the area in which the arena would be located, as well as the leader of the City Council of Philadelphia, our council president, Kenyatta Johnson. We'll be working closely with them and all members of council on the legislative process, and you're going to hear more about what that's going to look like a little later. But before I highlight what's in the agreement, it's important that I outline for you a set of principles that I established for our team. And I'm telling you, we had the best team in the world at the table on the city's behalf. But they had a set of principles that they went into that room to negotiate at that table with. And the first was careful stewardship of city resources and a focus on the city's fiscal stability. That is first and foremost. If it wasn't first and foremost for me, I shouldn't be the mayor of the city of Philadelphia. Next, maximizing the potential city-wide impact of such a large-scale economic development project. Next, unlocking the long overdue redevelopment of Market East, attracting investments, generating jobs, yielding new tax revenues, and creating vibrancy on an historic and critically important commercial corridor for our city. They also went in understanding that preserving and enhancing Chinatown including by responding to long-standing challenges that have developed over decades. Also, ensuring city residents and businesses, and this is important because whether we like it or not, we have to tend with the fact that although we've continued to see a reduction in poverty in the city of Philadelphia, we continue to be the poorest big city in the nation. And I'm not proud of that distinction. It's because of that ensuring city residents and businesses from groups that have been historically excluded from participation, that they have access to related employment and contracting opportunities. Now, those are principles that are articulated early on, and with that in mind, I want you to hear us when we talk about what makes this an historic agreement. First, it is a historic agreement. It's the best sports facility agreement in Philadelphia's history. It keeps our hometown 76ers playing in Philadelphia at least until 2061. Yeah, you heard me, 2061. Give that a round of applause. That's important. What else makes it historic? The Sixers are financing the $1.3 billion project with no city funds. That is an approach that is unprecedented among our local sports facilities. In addition, 76th Place will create over 1,000 construction and operation jobs. 1,000 construction and operation jobs. Now listen, these new jobs, they are paired with an historic economic opportunity plan, an EOP, that quite frankly, the likes of which Philadelphia has never seen before. Now this is to ensure that the employment and the contracting opportunities, and I've got a lot of questions about this, both during construction and operation. Construction and operation. We're not just talking about building here. That's important to note for the record. It will benefit individuals and businesses that are reflective of the community at large. Next, this historic agreement includes a $50 million community benefits agreement that will support nearby communities, adjacent communities, and also make citywide investments in education and economic opportunity for all. Now, when we walk through in detail the CBA investments, you're going to notice that they will help to jumpstart a broader and what I would call a city-led focus on Chinatown that we've never had before, that is aimed at ensuring its ongoing vitality and, quite frankly, ensuring that we strengthen what is by far a Philadelphia treasure. And we will do it through action and not just words. I want, as your mayor, I want a Chinatown that's rich and vibrant. I want the history and the culture to not just survive, but I want it to thrive. You heard me in that introductory video announcing my decision that I truly believe we have the best Chinatown in the nation. And I am committed to working with the leadership in the Chinatown community to ensure that we make good on every commitment that is included in this agreement that you're going to hear more about. But I want to make this clear, and I have to say this, I'm not sure, I just walked in where the visual is. I'll get to it in some space, but for the benefit of Philadelphians, because I don't know who started talking about this misinformation that has seemed to spread like wildfire through neighborhoods across the city. The first thing I want you to know, it is a lie. And what is a lie that has, I'm telling you, will be surprised how many places that I've gone where people have said to me, Mayor, I supported you, but why would you allow anyone to demolish our Chinatown. And I looked in great surprise and said, where in the world would you get that notion from? When have you ever heard that demolishing one building, one business in Chinatown is a part of what is being proposed as it relates to this arena? It was then when they showed me some faux posts that had been made on social media. Philadelphia, I can't control what people post on social media, but I need you to know this. This arena is not being built in Chinatown proper. It's not being built in Chinatown, and I need you to be absolutely clear. It is adjacent to Chinatown. It is near Chinatown, but it is not being built in Chinatown. Next, there is no demolition of any buildings or structures in Chinatown to enable this project. Somebody is saying she just repeated herself 10 times. If you have heard it as much as I have heard it, you will know why I just repeated myself that many times. I want to make sure everyone is clear. In addition to that, I want to note this. And the longer I go, the stronger it'll become, so just bear with me, this voice. 76th Place is projected to generate over $700 million in new tax revenues for the city of Philadelphia and the school district. Grow the economic pie is what I committed to doing. Finally, 76th Place presents an unprecedented opportunity to unlock that long-needed redevelopment and unprecedented revival on East Market Street, creating jobs, generating additional tax revenue, and bringing vibrancy back to a key commercial corridor. We want Market Street, and a lot of people didn't know about this historical fact. So many people were fact-checking the public announcement that I made. They said, well, you said that Market Street was Philadelphia's first commercial corridor. Because it was. It can reign supreme once again. Now, this is for the lifelong Philadelphians, what I'm about to mention. And this is when I do truly get a tad bit nostalgic. I remember the Market Street of old. I remember working on Dunkin' Donuts. You didn't even know there was a Dunkin' Donuts there's a Dunkin' Donuts right on Market Street. I worked there when I went to high school at 1118 Market Street, Parkway. When you earned enough that you could go shop and want to make it in your own right, and you could go and take your paycheck and buy some shoes at Strawbridge's, or go and buy some linen in JCPenney, or get a hot dog in Woolworths. I'm talking about my own right. I'm not talking about my pictures with Santa Claus that we waited in line for at Wanamaker's, but guess what it reflected? And this is important, and I want you to know I will not apologize about this. It represented a certain amount of quality that, quite frankly, if we want to get access to it right now, and I got to go to that whatever that place is called. I don't want Philadelphians having to travel anywhere else to get access to quality retail. We should be able to do it right here in our city and on Market Street like we used to. Now, I do want to emphasize this. Between the numerous commitments that are in this agreement to expanding the economic opportunity, investing in our young people, supporting the adjacent communities, in my view as your mayor, this is the best agreement, the best deal for our city right now. And I am proud to be here to affirm it, but this is only the beginning of the process. And I want you to know that this is what we are about to do, because someone's home and they're not here in the room to be able to participate. I want you to know that as it has been my standard operating procedure long before I became the mayor, state rep, a city council person, and as mayor, I will be coming with a town hall meeting in the neighborhood near you soon. We will hear directly from residents in our city, and we will be able able to talk to them about what's in the deal, what's in the agreement that will benefit them, because this economic impact is supposed to benefit the entire city of Philadelphia. Why are you holding these meetings? We remember when other stadiums were built in the city of Philadelphia. I don't remember a mayor traveling around to every district in the city having town hall meetings. We are empowering the tool of transparency so no one will be able to say that they don't have the details and the facts for themselves about what is included in this agreement. Now, I'm going to give you just a few, and these are just a few highlights of what's included in the agreement, and then you're going to hear from the folks who, on behalf of my administration, were at the table hammering the agreement out with the Philadelphia 76ers. The first thing I want to note for the record is the legislative process. We've gotten a lot of questions about the legislative process. Honoring Councilmember Squilla's commitment, the legislation is being publicly posted or sunshined. When you hear people say, well, when is the legislation going to be sunshine? That just means posted. It's going to be posted on the city's website today. Today, the legislation is being posted. Actually, it's online right now. All you have to do is go to www.phila.gov, scroll down on the city's webpage, and there's a link to the legislation right there. However, it's going to be formally transmitted for requested introduction in City Council on October the 24th. That's the legislative process. Next is the local tax revenue. Now, you're going to hear from two people for whom I have a great deal of respect and admiration, and we worked very closely together throughout this process, and that's Rob Dubois and Sam Rhodes, and they're going to walk through with you what this agreement will mean financially for Philadelphia and taxpayers. But I can't resist just sharing just a few top lines. First, you heard me mention the Sixers are financing an estimated $1.3 billion for this project with no city funds. Next, the Sixers will make an average pilot and use and occupancy payment of $6 million per year over 30 years. Just want to say that again for the people who wrote the editorials saying that this wasn't a historic agreement. That's $6 million per year over 30 years, and that's the average pilot and UNO payment. Now, the pilot and the UNO agreements, listen to this, Philadelphia, they are more than 2 times larger than any of those for any prior local arena or stadiums that have been built in the city of Philadelphia. Give that a round of applause, please. That's important. You heard me mention the $700 million in new tax revenues for the city and the school district over the 30-year life of the agreement. But I need to state for the record that this is the highest ever for a local sports facility. And Rob and Sam, they're going to take you through those details in a second. Now the next, and we're going to talk about this when we get to those town hall meetings, when lots of people were only focused on the arena proper, I would often state in some private conversations, don't be small-minded. You've got to think beyond the basketball. I'm the mayor. I'm supposed to be thinking beyond the basketball. That's when you find out what's available and what's in it for people in different constituencies across the city. Well, since the start of our negotiations with the Sixers, we've had a vision about how this agreement would leverage 3 different but very interrelated pathways to economic opportunity, and I call it beyond the basketball. So every time you hear me talking about this proposal, this agreement that we've reached, you will hear me talk about beyond the basketball. That's the name that I use to refer to the economic opportunity. First, it is the economic opportunity plan. Second, it is the $50 million community benefits agreement. And third, it is the significant development potential along Market East. The EOP, the Economic Opportunity Plan, it is by far the best in the city's history. What makes it the best? It's more comprehensive, specific, and detailed than any prior EOP for a recent large-scale project and or a prior stadium or arena. It contains goals for a diverse workforce, for minority, women, and disabled employees, and diverse contractors. That includes MWDSBEs that meet or exceed participation targets in prior local arenas and stadiums. What else does it do? It sets goals for the employment of local workers. That means City of Philadelphia residents for both construction, but not just construction, because lots of people were just talking about the construction, and don't get me wrong, construction is extremely important, but we've got to think about that history and operations. And so ongoing operations, we also have goals that are set for the employment of local Philadelphia workers. Are you going to hear more about that from Nicole Stokes? The $50 million community benefits agreement. Let me say a few things about the CBA. One, this $50 million CBA is higher on a current dollar basis than those for prior local arenas and or stadium deals. Two, and I want you to hear this because this part becomes extremely important. It front loads the spending for both the citywide efforts and the arena impacted communities with 70% of the $50 million total and 97% of the $25 million that will be focused on the impacted communities. It will be spent in the first 10 years of the agreement. Why is that extremely important? Usually what people have been accustomed to is, okay, we have what is considered to be a community benefits agreement, and through 2061, you'll give me X amount of dollars per year. We need help right now. We had to negotiate to be able to front load the money so that we could put it to good use right now, and I am very proud that we were able to get there. That's important. That's very important. Next, the CBA, Chinatown Small Business Lending Fund. It's $3 million. What is it? A small business lending program ideally working in conjunction with community-based lenders that will help to stabilize and expand Chinatown proper specific businesses. Next, a business disruption fund, $1.6 million. Grant funding, not loans, but grant funding to assist small businesses impacted during the construction of the arena. And next, Power Up Your Business, $2 million. This is funding to support neighborhood-based businesses and entrepreneurs who have a vision and or a desire to expand and grow their businesses and potentially one day become a concessionaire and or do business with the arena. They will now have a place and space that will help them rise to that occasion. And so with that, I want to add it up. 2, that's 3, that's 3.6, and that's $6.6 million. So for any member of the Chinatown community who I've spoken with, I have a group of stakeholders who I met with, who I respect a great deal, especially our elders who were a part of that conversation. As you can see, we listened, and we told you we would be good listeners, and I'm proud of that portion of the agreement. Next is for housing support. This is something else that was the result of those conversations, but it's in line with the goals and the visions of this administration. Housing support, $3 million to support a range of housing coordinated programs. affordable housing preservation, senior housing, home ownership support. Why is this important? As mayor of this city, I've made a commitment to create through the building of new and/or the preservation of existing 30,000 units of housing here in the city of Philadelphia during 4 years, one term. And this helps to leverage support for that commitment. So I'm excited about the housing. Next is the traffic support for public transit. $3 million funding to support SEPTA and PATCO used for arena events. This is extremely important. We want people taking mass transit. We want them coming in on PATCO. We want them taking the Broad Street line, the L, the regional rail, every mode of transportation, mass transit, public transit that's available. We want to incentivize it, and I'm excited about it. Next part, and I've heard this quite often, the public safety concern. The community benefits agreement includes $4.1 million in funding for 21 new CCTV cameras at locations around the arena and for the construction of a new neighborhood security substation with public safety staff, not just from the Philadelphia Police Department, but the PPD, SEPTA, the Center City District, and Jefferson. Give that a round of applause for public safety, please. Coordinated, no silos. And one thing that's been extremely important to me, you know, that's that streetscape and the lightings and upgrades with lightings at 4 locations around the arena. Economic opportunity. As a black woman who's been elected since 2005, who started interning in council at the tender age of 17, you don't know how many times I've heard a black developer, small business owner, say that they are interested in starting a development company or a small business, but they can't obtain the insurance and/or the bonding. We have built into this agreement a business barrier fund of $1 million, which is seed funding to assist small businesses with obtaining insurance, bonding, paying fees that are needed in order to access work with the arena and the adjacent community. So Philadelphia, we can't build in the economic opportunity for you and say, okay, it's available. And we know that the insurance and the bonding has been a barrier to entry, and we do nothing to connect those who need it most with the opportunity. We've done that with this agreement, and I'm proud of that. Education support. City College for Municipal Employment, we just funded via our $6.3 billion budget that we just passed, our One Philly budget. I'm proud that $4.5 million is included in this agreement to support the City College for Municipal Employment. It's a key initiative in my administration that includes related employment and contracting opportunities that are going to come from the arena, related development, and ongoing commerce and business activity in the adjacent community. Next is it's all right, you can clap for that. Thank you, it's fine. Next is the extended day, extended year schooling. I know this is important because I watched a video on the way in from a group called Rosie's Girls. The electricians have supported, and it's been established throughout the trades. If I haven't, Joe Grace, you make sure I give it to you so that we can post it, to give access to opportunity for people who never thought that working in a space like the building trades, which is male-dominated. Here we have an organization that is there solely to motivate, inspire, encourage, and train women to enter into the building trades. Yeah, that's important. But guess what? They shouldn't wait until they've amassed the amount of student loan debt that I have, where I'm going to be paying back until I'm dead. You should find out while you are a student in the school district of Philadelphia that that opportunity is available to you. So our extended day, extended year schooling, while that is here to close the enrichment gap and support Philadelphia students and families with free before and after school care, we will also use this as an opportunity to ensure that students in the school district of Philadelphia, they know that the building trades is a place where they belong as well. Next, you heard me talk about revitalizing Market Street. If anybody tells you that Market Street is okay the way it is, I will tell you that they haven't been in Philadelphia as long as I have, and that vision is short-sighted. This development and this agreement, it has the potential to change the way we think about our city. And I want you to know that for me, this didn't just start when I got to the mayor's office. The final part of this agreement that is really impactful, well, two more things, but this is extremely important to me because no one knew about it because I never talked about it when I was a member of city council. Sometimes you just get work done and you don't say, look at me, this is what I'm doing. But I know you noticed we don't have a WNBA team here in the city of Philadelphia. Any of y'all ever noticed that? Y'all know y'all mayor don't like that. Councilwoman Parker didn't like that. I met with and got connected to during my tenure as the majority leader in council with a dynamic group of women who have been working for a very, very long time to put together the potential for Philadelphia to see a team one day. And I knew it was a long shot. I knew it was a long shot. I knew it was a long shot, but when they told me about the idea, I said, you know, we're going to try. I don't like Philadelphia being left out, so I did what I do quietly, called Governor Tom Wolf and his team. I said, Governor, I need you to meet with this group of women. I called our mayor, Jim Kinney, and said, Mr. Mayor, this is in the middle of COVID, so we're not meeting in person, we're virtual. Mr. Mayor, can we meet with you? And then I talked to my president. At that time, it was Council President Darrell Clark. While they were working hard, trying to pursue the opportunity, we were able to, because this becomes important in Philadelphia, and people haven't seen us work together this way. I'm talking about in sync. But while they were working hard, we were able to secure support from the governor, from the city, that's the administration, and the legislative body. Now, although they were not successful, you all know me well enough. You know I don't take no easily. So I want us to keep working extremely hard as we can, but united together. And I will tell you that with this new Sixers arena there is no one who can tell me that Philadelphia just would not have upped its position in trying to pursue a WNBA team for our great city. I can hope, I can dream, I can pray. Finally, I want to say this. Chinatown, you heard me mention that you are extremely important. And $25 million of this community benefits agreement funding is focused on the surrounding community. Renee, our city solicitor, I'm not sure if she... Give Renee Garcia, our city solicitor, a round of applause. She's been my lioness blanket, thank you. They're going to walk through those details, she and Sophie, but I want to make this very clear. We are going to make good on every commitment that we made to you. You're going to hear now from the subject matter experts, and we're going to start with Sam Rhodes and Rob Dubois on the history of stadium transactions and how this agreement measures up. After Sam, the transaction framework. You're going to hear from Tiffany and Renee. Then tax revenues, Rob. The EOP plan, Nicole Stokes. and I heard you did an amazing job wherever you are recently. On the community benefits agreement, Renee and Sophie Bryant, the Beyond the Basketball theme, and East Market Street development, that's going to be Jesse Lawrence. The Chinatown commitment, John Mondlak and Mike Carroll. Related approvals and requirements, Mondlak and Mike Carroll. And then, what, the JLL folks here? Where's JLL? I drove y'all crazy, didn't I? I'm sorry. Let me say it. I can see you in person. You're not on the screen now. We apologize, but you're going to hear from JLL a comparative perspective about this agreement, and you're going to learn from them how Philadelphia fares with the rest of the nation. We want to make sure we cross every T and dot every I, because when we leave this meeting on today, there will be no one who can watch this video or who attended this meeting who said that anyone attempted to not disclose all of the details associated with this agreement. So give the team a round of applause, and Sam and Rob, come on up.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to do some framing, and then we'll go on to the next speaker. So my name is Tiffany Thurman, and I'm the Chief of Staff to Mayor Parker. We'll start with some background. So as you may recall, the Sixers initially proposed in 2020 to relocate from the Wells Fargo Center to a new arena constructed at Penn's Landing. However, the organization was unable to secure the support needed for this proposal to move forward. By mid-2020, the Sixers announced a new plan to build a portion of the Fashion District site. The Sixers also advised at that time that they would not seek a new lease with the Wells Fargo Center after their current contract expired at the end of the 2030-2031 season. They would also not pursue local funding under that development or for that development. Under the administration, the city started, under the previous administration, the city started an extensive due diligence process to analyze the impacts of the proposed project and determine the transaction structure, legislative package, and other approvals needed for the project. The resulting 4 impact reports, which were conducted by independent consultants, were released through this administration last month and have continued to inform the discussion around this project. We can move to the next slide. Mayor Parker talked about her guiding principles. When we started on day one, the mayor set her own table. There's been some questions about who was at the negotiation table, and I want to be very clear. The mayor set the negotiation table, and she determined who would be at the negotiating table, and she set the rules of engagement, and those rules of engagement informed our guiding principles. Those guiding principles were: 1, we would take careful stewardship of all city resources and focus on the city's fiscal stability, which we did through the passage of our FY25 One Philly budget. We would maximize the potential citywide impact of such a large-scale development project, ensuring that the benefits were felt across the entire city, including, of course, Chinatown. That we would also unlock the long overdue and much needed redevelopment of Market East, which my colleague Jesse Lawrence will go through in great detail later this evening. And through that unlocking, that it would attract new investments, generating jobs and new tax revenue that the mayor outlined in her opening just now. We would also preserve and enhance Chinatown. We would preserve and enhance Chinatown, not do away with Chinatown. And that's really important that you all hear that from us. And we would do that by responding to long-standing, pre-existing challenges that have developed decade over decade. We know much, we will definitely have much further discussion, and that will continue throughout this year and beyond. And we will continue to work with the stakeholders and the communities. And lastly, we focused on ensuring that city residents and businesses from groups historically excluded from participation in deals like this would have access through employment and contracting opportunities. I'm really excited that you'll have an opportunity to meet our EOP team, our kitchen cabinet, and you'll hear about the very thoughtful and intentional process that we took under the mayor's guidance with developing and crafting this unprecedented and historic economic opportunity plan. Next slide. The agreement's highlights and transaction structure. We all know that Philadelphia is hands down the best sports team town in this country. Hands down. We were relentless. We worked tirelessly to ensure that this is the best sports facility agreement in the city's history. And that's a big, bold statement, but we have to validate it, which we will do this evening. And the 76ers, we wanted to ensure that they would remain our home team at least until 2061. With regard to funding, the Sixers are financing the entire $1.3 billion project with no city funds, as Mayor Parker outlined. We also wanted to ensure that through this agreement, 76 Place would create over 1,000 construction jobs and operation jobs, and that we would not just focus on the construction period or the pre-construction period, but that we also focused on the long-term operation plan to ensure that there were provisions for internships, real sustainable internships, management trainee programs, and the like. We also wanted to ensure that this plan served as another instrumental element of this agreement and reflected the community at large. We'll talk about the $50 million community benefits agreement, which the mayor talked about how we took a more front-loading approach and how those supports will impact not just today, but on into the future. These investments will be critical to help spur a broader, city-led focus on Chinatown aimed at ensuring its ongoing vitality and strengthening this treasured community for many years to come. Next slide. The new arena is also expected to generate more than $700 million in tax revenues for the city and the school district, resources that are urgently needed today for our students and the people that we're called to serve. Finally, this project offers an unprecedented and remarkable opportunity to unlock needed redevelopment or market ease. I am really proud of this deal. It truly is the best financial deal the city has ever struck for the arena and for the stadium. And with the many commitments in the agreement to expanding economic opportunity, investing in our young people, and supporting nearby communities, we know that this is the right deal, and it will ensure, and we are ensuring, that this will advance our safer, cleaner economic opportunity for all agenda. Next, we'll have Andrew from our City Law Department, Andrew Richmond, come up to discuss the transaction structure to this agreement. And after Andrew, we will then go on to our competing facilities provision.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good evening. I'm Andrew Richmond. I am the chair of the Compliance and Legislation Group for the City of Philadelphia Law Department. As legal counsel to both the mayor's administration and city council, the law department's job is to ensure that all terms of the deal are compliant with law and that the city's rights are both protected and enforceable. As you will see from the documents provided today to the public, the deal is legally complex and involves a number of agreements and pieces of legislation that you will learn more about during this presentation. I'm going to give an overview of the real estate transaction and how this deal will be structured and memorialized. In general, the structure of the real estate transaction is similar to those of the Phillies, Eagles, and Wells Fargo Center deals in that once the city obtains the parcels, they will be leased back to the Sixers through the Philadelphia Authority for Industrial Development, known as PAID. We will do a deep dive into the maps of Market East later this evening, but I first want to orient you to the parcel in which the arena will sit. This is an aerial view from the east. You can see the arena here in red, abutting Market Street, and then Chinatown in the white shaded area. The white solid rectangle is the convention center where we are now. Next slide, please. The Sixers will purchase a portion of the Fashion District, the 3 green boxes on the map, from 11th Street to 8th Street, and the former Greyhound Bus Depot located at 1001 to 1025 Filbert Street, that's shown in the red box on the map up here, and we'll use the western portion of the mall, the striped area, for the arena project. The non-striped area of the mall will remain. The Sixers will demo the arena parcels and contribute the parcels to the city through PAID. To form the arena parcel, the city will combine the Sixers' contributed parcels with city-owned parcels, including portions of the former 1000 block of Filbert Street, which is the purple box, air rights relating to the existing 10th Street Bridge, which is the orange box, and parts of parcels related to Jefferson Station under the striped green section. Through PAID, the city will lease the consolidated arenas parcel, which is within the thick black outline on the map, back to the Sixers. Next slide, please. Later in the presentation, my colleague John Monlock, the Interim Director of Planning and Development for the City of Philadelphia, will summarize the package of 11 ordinances and resolutions required for this transaction. I will touch upon one ordinance right now, which we will call the Transaction Ordinance. This ordinance authorizes the transfer of the parcels that I just spoke about. Exhibits to this transaction ordinance are the ground lease, which governs the lease of the consolidated parcel between the city and paid, and the sublease and development term sheet, which summarizes key points of the transaction from the sublease and development agreement between paid and the 76ers, and which will be completed later this fall. There are a few more documents you will see posted today on the website. A servicing agreement between the city and paid, wherein paid will perform certain services for the city, an economic opportunity plan, which you'll hear about more from my colleague Nicole Stokes, and the payment schedule to the $50 million community benefits agreement, which I will address later this evening, where my colleague Renee Garcia will address. But I will preview that the CBA is a little bit different from others because it's enforceable by the city, regardless of the transfer of ownership of the team. Per the commitment that Councilmember Squilla made to the public, these agreements and the ordinances have been posted on the city's website today, but they will not be formally transmitted to City Council until October 24th. As you can see here, demolition, I think we go to the next slide. Demolition is slated to start in 2026, construction in 2028, and the arena will open in August of 2031. This timing assumes that the legislation will pass by the end of this calendar year. I'm going to jump around a little bit to the competing facilities slide, which is slide 65, if you want to just go there. Okay. This provision, which was first reported in the news as the Most Favored Nations Clause, is summarized in the term sheet, which is available online already, and it's in a paragraph called Arrangements with Other Competing Facilities. Conceptually, the city agreed that it would not provide direct funding, below market rate land outside the stadium complex, or tax incentives to competing arenas of similar size unless the Sixers get a comparable benefit. It does not cover venues owned by nonprofits or universities or existing venues owned by the city. It does not cover funds passed through the Commonwealth or federal government or a foundation. It does not cover citywide programs. It does not cover routine or emergency maintenance done by the city. It does not protect future owners unrelated to the current owners of the team. At bottom, the term protects the Sixers' interest, investment in the arena, but does not prohibit the city from investing in its own stadium district. Next, I'm going to hand it over to, Sam Rhodes from PIDC. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name is Sam Rhodes, and I work with Philadelphia's Economic Development Arm, PIDC. And I'm here tonight to set the Sixers proposal in historic context. The Parker administration's agreement with the Sixers builds on a nationwide progression from public ownership of professional sports facilities to public-private partnerships. For much of the 20th century, the nation's and this city's sports facilities were funded, constructed, and operated entirely by city government. For the Philadelphians amongst us, think of Veterans Stadium or JFK, which were completely owned and operated by the city of Philadelphia. Coming into the current era, leagues were able to capitalize on their popularity with significant broadcasting rights, and the teams were able to secure substantial naming rights and advertising revenues. With the ability to borrow against these revenues, responsibility for funding the construction of these facilities, and the financial responsibility for operating and designing and maintaining these structures started to shift from the public sector to the private sector. Next slide. Philadelphia saw this trend itself in the development of the Wells Fargo Center, of Citizens Bank Park and of Lincoln Financial Field. And you'll note that they have corporate names as opposed to civic names like JFK or Veterans Stadium. That's part of the shift. In each case, the City of Philadelphia and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania made substantial but capped contributions towards land, infrastructure, parking, site preparation, and otherwise shifted the responsibility for design, finance, development, and operations onto the teams, while also obtaining substantial economic opportunity plans and community benefits agreements. Next slide. The proposal in front of us is very different from those earlier transactions and far superior. It has no local public funding. We have progressed from 100% government funding to capped public funding to no public funding in this transaction. It builds on the latest trend in urban-based, transit-friendly facilities that integrate with the existing urban fabric and are more substantially privately funded. It includes a significant pilot and UNO payment agreement, a substantial community benefits agreement, and a historic economic opportunity plan, as you've heard and as we'll detail further this evening. All of these things are a function of running the transaction, as Andrew described, through the City of Philadelphia. Next, I want to turn it over to Rob Dubow, the city's Director of Finance, who will now review the tax revenues. Thanks.
Thanks, Sam. I'm Rob Dubow from the City Finance Office, and so I'm here to talk about the unprecedented numbers in this deal. As you've heard multiple times, the Sixers are funding the entire project. That is unprecedented with city sports facilities, but not only that, they are making a pilot payment every year. That pilot payment averages $6 million a year, with the majority of that money going to the school district, and the school district benefit was very important to us as we negotiated this deal. And comparing this to earlier pilots, you can see on this slide the Wells Fargo pilot, the Eagles pilot, and the Phillies pilot. If you add all three of those together, they equal just about $6 million a year, which is the average size of this pilot. We wanted to kind of, consistent with our guiding principles, we wanted to understand the tax impact of this deal. And before I go into detail on the next slide, I wanted to talk a little bit about our approach, because we wanted to make sure that the numbers really meant something. We wanted to make sure that when we did an economic impact study, we could rely on those numbers. So first, I want to talk about what we didn't do. We didn't do a typical economic impact study because we share the concern about having overblown numbers. So we only counted activity inside the arena when we looked at the economic impact. We didn't use large multipliers that you'll see in other economic impact studies that tend to puff up numbers. We also didn't assume that any increase in Sixer revenue, so for example, if they win a string of championships, we didn't assume that in here, so we didn't assume additional revenue from that. What we did do, we hired a nationally recognized firm called CSL, who studied arenas around the country to help us look at what the impact of this arena would be. So what they did is they looked at what happened in other cities in particular that had multiple arenas, and in other large cities around the same size. They also reached out to promoters to talk to promoters about what we could reasonably expect would happen in our new facility. They based their analysis only on the net new events that they thought that the arena would bring to the city. They also looked at things like, will this arena be displacing things that would have already happened? Will some of the spending actually wind up going into other jurisdictions? And they adjusted for that. So with all of that done, we thought, okay, these numbers are real. So what did we find? We found that the arena would attract 53 net new events, 35 concerts, 15 family events, and 3 other events. And we found that between construction and those new events, the arena would drive almost $2 billion in new spending, would create the jobs that we've talked about, and would generate new revenue. And in this slide, we look at the revenue in 2 ways, one in current dollars, and then another if you discount back to try to compensate for the time value of money. Without that net present value, we get the $700 million that we've talked about, unprecedented, and we will show a slide that shows how that compares to earlier arenas. On a present value basis, $250 million for the city and the school district, and another $140 million for the state. So combined, about $400 million in net present value. On the next slide, and this is one of our favorite slides, we compare this deal to prior arena deals. And what I really want to focus on is how this deal differs. So if you look at the column that has impact and go down to where it says project costs, you will see that for the Wells Fargo Center, Citizens Bank Park, and Lincoln Financial Field, for acquisition, there were public dollars, sometimes substantial public dollars. For 76th Place, it's all the team. You'll see that for site preparation, infrastructure, all team for this deal, and public money for each of the earlier deals. Same for parking. So really different, really unprecedented that the team is putting all that money into this deal. Go to the next slide. The next slide looks at the dollars, the tax dollars. For the city itself, you can see that it'd be about $555 million over 30 years. For the school district, about $150 million. Compare that to the earlier deals, and you can see that this deal generates substantially more revenue, and that's true whether you look at it on a net present value basis, on a current value basis. It's just more money for the city and the school district, which is very important to us. We've talked about the community benefits agreement, and one of the big differentiators in that agreement between this agreement and earlier deals is that a lot of this is front-loaded. Other deals tended to have even payments across time. So we'll see more of the benefit sooner in this deal. We also have an economic opportunity plan that is unprecedented in the way we've set it up and in the controls we have to make sure that it's actually abided by. On the next slide, we start the beyond the basketball part of the discussion. As the mayor talk about how this deal is unlocking economic opportunity throughout the city. One, through that economic opportunity plan that I discussed and that Nicole Stokes will walk us through in more detail. Two, through that negotiated community benefits agreement. And Sophie Bryan's going to take us through more of that. And then the significant development potential along Market East that Jesse Lawrence is going to walk us through. All of those initiatives focus on expanding opportunity for both the workforce and for local businesses. We took a comprehensive view across these components, and they reflect national best practices, and they position us to meet or exceed all of our goals. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole.
Thanks, Rob. Good evening, everyone. Okay. So my name is Nicole Stokes, and I'm an attorney within the City of Philadelphia Law Department. I am proud to present to you the details of the Comprehensive Economic Opportunity Plan, referred to by me as an EOP, that has been negotiated by both the parties. A strong EOP must be ambitious and aggressive, but also allow for realistic goals and to allow for compliance and enforcement of the terms. We have seen in other cities that lofty goals are often set but never reached. We strongly believe that this EOP is different. As you see on the screen, the city has identified subject matter experts that have joined in partnership to ensure that this EOP is successful. On that note, I would like to thank our city experts who were crucial in the development of this EOP. Standing with me today, I have Deputy Commerce Director of the Office of Economic Opportunity, Lynn Newsom, Senior Director for Capacity, Michelle Gums, PIDC Senior Vice President of Client Engagement and Business Support, Marla S. Hamilton, Program Director for the Capital Program Office, Aisha Herring-Miller, PHL Airport Vice President of Diversity and Accessibility, Denise Bailey, and Division of Housing and Community Development Minority Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Manager, Danielle Sneed. We can go to the next slide. At the highest level, this partnership has created a plan that is a more comprehensive plan than prior large-scale city EOPs. This plan contains goals that will create opportunities where both diverse and local businesses and workers are afforded a meaningful opportunity to participate within the project. When we say diverse in this context, we have specifically set goals for minority, women, disabled, businesses, and workers. Our comprehensive plan requires proactive measures to ensure that both diverse companies, diverse workers, and local city residents are included in both the construction and the ongoing operation of the arena. To support these goals, the EOP explicitly requires ongoing reporting and monitoring throughout its lifetime. In the EOP, the Sixers have made specific commitments to inclusion practices, such as debundling different aspects of the projects that will maximize diverse and small business participation, which generates scopes of work that are more accessible to smaller businesses. Many of these categories have not explicitly been included in past EOPs. They have also committed to expanding the Sixers' current supplier diversity pipeline, and notably agreeing that alterations or renovations over $1 million or alterations that cannot be completed within 30 days are subject to the terms of this EOP. In implementation, the Sixers, its general contractors, and all subcontractors must exercise best and good faith efforts to provide meaningful opportunities and representative contracting for diverse entities and employment opportunities for minority, women, and disabled and local employees. Best and good faith efforts in this context requires the firms to act in good faith and document specific efforts that are made to recruit and engage these entities. The Sixers have also made specific commitments to abide by the requirements that best and good faith efforts must be used to provide this meaningful participation, and they'll be documented and shared. Submitting a contracting and workforce diversity goal plan is also included. The agreed upon list of actions that encompass best and good faith efforts within this plan is more detailed and expansive than past prior city EOPs. This EOP also contains various protections for the city of Philadelphia. It requires a schedule of committed diverse companies before construction that will also be submitted through the duration of the project. That is a key distinction from past EOPs. It also specifically guards against pass-through entities to ensure, to ensure true participation by diverse companies. It also compels the Sixers to hire an independent third-party monitor, so that's an unbiased person that will conduct monthly on-site inspections with written reports of the findings. And most importantly, the EOP has guardrails creating the mechanism for ongoing reporting. These guardrails are detailed and distinct, as I stated, more than any other city EOP. This EOP also establishes an oversight committee, so at minimum, They will be reporting to an oversight committee, which includes representatives from the Sixers, specifically a C-suite representative, which was actually included in the Citizens Bank Park ELP, and that in itself demonstrated success. It will also include the city's Office of Economic Opportunity, the Law Department, the Labor Standards Unit, City Council, the Building Trades Council, and of course, the Mayor's Office. The reportings will also be made available to the public on a city website. Another key distinction in this EOP regarding reporting is that it references both construction and operations. The designated oversight committee, which includes all the parties I just mentioned, is responsible for reviewing these monthly, quarterly, and annual reports to ensure that the Sixers are meeting their goals throughout its lifetime. It is also important to note that the Sixers are a willing and ready partner to this EOP. This means that all the parties involved want to see this EOP work. The minutes of the committee meetings and the reports will also be made available to the public, which is a key difference from past city EOPs. The exact location of the reports will be on a central city website, which will be released at a later date. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you will see specific goals in the agreement posted online, but also within these slides. They have goals, like I stated, for both ongoing construction and operations. So in sum, these goals have been set for minority, women, disabled businesses, local workers, and various entities in the categories of laborers, both skilled and apprentices, and in addition to persons employed directly and indirectly by the Sixers. Next slide, please. Okay. So the goals for skilled laborers, and apprentices were developed through a dual lens of both the current workforce demographics and programs that are already in place by the parties that plan to expand the workforce. Best and good faith effort in these categories includes specific named programs and partnerships. So for example, we will leverage relationships with Philadelphia Works, OIC Philadelphia, Rebuild, the city's capital budget office, the City College for Municipal Employment, and Everybody Builds. This EOP also identifies specific scopes of work to assist with targeted outreach within each category. So for example, within the professional services, we have considered various fields, including but not limited to bonding, accounting, financial advising, legal services, engineering, landscaping, and technological services. Next slide, thank you. Within the operations workforce phase, we also have set goals that exceed the prior local arena and stadium deals. We have included local workforce goals, which is a distinction that's included in this EOP. And in this instance, local refers to residents who live within the city of Philadelphia. So those are our resident workers. And also notably, these goals run through the entire Sixers workforce for ongoing operations. So they will affect interns, hourly, salaried, and management employees. So goals have been set through all. Further, within the operations phase contracting, we have also set goals that exceed goals for local sports venues. Notably, concessions specifically, those goals are contemplated and included within this agreement. In addition, the Sixers have proactively committed to including Chinatown businesses in outreach and in development. The Sixers are also already in the process of building a pipeline of diverse vendors that can do this work. They have been piloting a model program to help prepare relevant businesses to accomplish the goals set forth within the plan. With that summary, I'll pass it to the next presenter, City Solicitor Renee Garcia.
Good evening, everybody. Like the mayor, my voice is also a little weak, so hopefully I'll be able to get through this. I am the city solicitor. My job is to make sure that the city's interests are protected and enforceable. And so it was really important that we got the community benefits agreement right. Sophie, Brian, and I are going to talk about the allocations and most importantly, the enforceability of the CBA. As you have heard, the Sixers will be contributing $50 million aimed at building up Chinatown and Market East and supporting citywide programming. This dollar amount is higher in current dollars than prior stadium deals. 70% of the total funds and 97% of the $25 million allocated for impacted communities will be spent within the first 10 years. Thank you. This is in order to achieve the greatest impact and mitigate issues on the Chinatown community as the arena is being built. As Sophie will discuss, the allocations directly respond to the findings of the impact reports and community feedback received throughout the process. Comprehensive in its approach, a portion of the funds also goes to education and economic opportunities throughout the city. Next slide, please. Now, before we get into the details, I want to spend a few minutes on the structure. Generally, CBAs are entered into between a developer and community organizations. For those of you following the news, the CBA related to the Barclays Center in Brooklyn did not include a successor clause, which meant when this team was sold several times, the new owner said that they did not have to pay according to the CBA. And it was on the community associations to find lawyers and to spend their money to sue. We were not going to do that here, were we? Absolutely not. As such, we have negotiated the CBA as a contract between the city and the Sixers, with the city having full enforcement rights. Those rights roll over to each owner of the team should a sale occur. Except for some direct infrastructure spend by the team, the funds will flow into the city and then out to third parties. Both the city and the team are subject to reporting requirements to ensure compliance and transparency to the public, and we'll have more information when we get to that point on where those reports will be posted so that you all, the public, can see where the money is being spent. I will now turn it over to Sophie to discuss the allocations in further detail.
Thank you, Renee. Sophie Bryan here, and I'm going to drill down into some of those details about the $50 million community benefit agreement. So, simple math, 50-50. The way the mayor and her team approached the CBA was to take half of the allocation and really direct it to being responsive to the impact reports, considerate of adjacent communities, and encompassing feedback from impacted communities. And then the balance, the other $25 million, is directed at citywide impact. So 25 gets us to the 50. Next slide, please. As Renee mentioned, and we probably just can't mention enough, it's really important that these dollars are front-loaded. I think Rob talked earlier about how for prior community benefit agreements related to arenas and stadiums, that $30 million, for instance, would be $1 million a year over 30 years. By sharp contrast, the agreement we've negotiated on behalf of the city has 70% of the $50 million spent in the first 10 years, and fully 97% of those dollars that are directed to impacted communities spent in the first 10 years. This is by design. Goal number one is to make sure to mitigate any impacts from arena construction and operations, but a more positive goal is to make sure to leverage the economic opportunity that's created by this significant development project, and as my colleague Jesse Lawrence will address, additional development along East Market, what the mayor refers to as her beyond the basketball vision. Next slide, please. So I'm going to now go through those two $25 million buckets. First, talking about allocations that are responsive to impact reports, responsive to adjacent communities. And we've grouped this by sort of broad topic area. So first and foremost, small businesses. We are all sensitive to, and I'm sure anyone who's been following the discussion about this transaction, concerned about the potential impact on small businesses in Chinatown, but also on East Market, Washington West, and adjacent communities. So we want to articulate a couple of key investments that use CBA dollars to respond to those impacts. First is a Chinatown Small Business Lending Fund. The idea here is to create some seed funding that would be leveraged with additional resources to make loans to that would help expand and support local businesses. And here, this is really sort of proof point number one of the mayor's entire approach of leveraging dollars to have a broader impact. Second, a business disruption fund. Dollars that would specifically help respond to and support businesses that might experience some construction-related disruptions in deliveries, in business access, in road access during construction. And then, as the mayor mentioned earlier, $2 million to leverage the very successful Power Up Your Business program at CCP, which has an extensive track record of supporting existing and aspiring entrepreneurs in getting that technical assistance and doing business planning to really grow their businesses. The mayor articulated to her team the key priority that those Power Up Your Business offerings must be both available to folks with limited English proficiency and to demonstrate cultural competency. So offerings that are available and useful and accessible to intended communities. Next slide, please. In the sort of broad category of neighborhood preservation, my colleagues John Monlack and Mike Carroll are going to speak a little bit later this evening about the mayor's overarching commitment to Chinatown. So right now I'm just going to pick up a couple of the CBA-supported investments here. So first and foremost, fans of urban planning in the Parker administration. And so there are dollars in the community benefit agreement that would support master planning efforts both for Chinatown as a community and also for Market East, really taking advantage of the opportunity to rethink, invest, and re-envision. And like as with any good city planning, urban planning effort, that master planning effort is going to be done in conjunction with community and with stakeholders. And we'll really focus in on the issues that we know are of great import to Chinatown residents, including traffic and parking and other quality of life issues. Next slide, please. Housing, the mayor is a vocal advocate and a visionary around housing, and we heard a little bit earlier tonight about her vision for creating and preserving 30,000 units of housing. So the city is going to take a $3 million allocation in the CBA and really leverage that in conjunction with the mayor's broader plan, but focusing those dollars in on housing concerns, displacement risks in Chinatown and adjacent communities. Next slide, please. Cleanliness, another example of the sort of idea here of taking an existing program, putting additional resources in it so those dollars go farther. So among the locations of the mayor's PHL-TCB program, there's an existing program in Chinatown through the Philadelphia Chinatown Development Corporation, which is a feeder for the Future Track program, again, a pathway to economic opportunity. So an investment there, and that's going to be paired with an investment that the Sixers are making with Center City District that's not part of the CBA, just to be clear. Those are dollars the Sixers are spending outside of the CBA. Next slide, please. And then on traffic, and Mike Carroll and John will have much more to say about traffic, but there are dollars, $3 million in the CBA to help subsidize and incentivize folks to use public transit to go to arena events. I think we all were listening carefully when the traffic study report was shared, which basically found if you have 40% or fewer of folks coming to arena events by private car, you can mitigate traffic and parking impacts. And Mike will talk more about the Traffic Event Management Plan, or TEMP, that will accompany that investment. Next slide, please. And then on safety, and the mayor ran through these, I think important to think of the arena there on East Market Street, but with surrounding streets, and these kinds of investments in CCTV, in new lighting, and in the neighborhood security substation are going to serve and be to the benefit of the broader communities surrounding the arena. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to pivot from that $25 million that was really focused on impacted communities to the $25 million that's intended to have a citywide effect. And important to note here that these citywide dollars also can benefit the impacted and adjacent communities. The mayor, a huge priority for her was this Business Barriers Fund, so really very practically and pragmatically addressing those hurdles that can keep an aspiring entrepreneur, a small business, from accessing that next contract. So pooled funding to deal with bonding and insurance and fees. A business readiness program, and we're going to hear from Regina Hairston from the African American Chamber. The Diverse Chambers Coalition is ready to help assist and support businesses, to help those businesses be ready to access the contracting opportunities that we think both the arena development and the Beyond the Basketball Market East development will unlock. Next slide, please. The mayor mentioned, again, in the sort of idea of leveraging, investing in City College for municipal employment, extended day, extended year schooling, taking a generational view of the impact that this arena and the development we think it's going to spur can have on Philadelphia and Philadelphia young people in particular. Next slide. So several more investments in that vein of education. Nicole spoke about how the EOP includes goals for internships. And here are some resources from that EOP to support dedicated pipeline for high school and college students into roles with the Sixers organization. Sixers are known for their youth basketball league. There's going to be an expansion of that. And then, of course, tickets for School District of Philadelphia students, charter school students to attend games. Next slide, please. Here, two more pieces. Not surprisingly, there's a provision to enable community use of the arena. If folks have seen the renderings, you can probably already imagine how powerful it would be to have access as a small community-based organization to that space for your event. And John Monluck will talk more about some of the other public access aspects of the arena that are in motion. And then finally, recreation center support, $2.5 million to help support programming and discretionary investments in city rec centers, our pride and joy. So I think I'm turning it over to my colleague, yes, Jesse Lawrence, to talk about Beyond the Basketball.
Good evening, everybody. So I'm switching gears to the scope and development itself. The top line here is really that the arena proposal represents a never-seen-before opportunity that'll jumpstart Market East's potential, and it'll unlock the long-needed attention that East Market Street needs. As you heard earlier from our guiding principles, this opportunity will create jobs, it'll generate tax revenue, and it'll also bring some vibrancy back to the city's key commercial corridor. It'll leverage past, present, and planned development, which you'll see in the slides ahead, and it'll intentionally sync up with upcoming master planning initiatives. However, the development itself, the development potential on the horizon itself will significantly be driven by the Sixers team and their ability to assemble some key parcels. Next slide. So in quantifying the development, we note that there's almost 1,000 units that were added to the area, the corridor specifically, since 2017 and on, and near and adjacent that corridor. That's in addition to 261,000 square feet of new commercial office space opportunities and 223,000 square feet of ground floor retail space. On the horizon, we have 800 new units in the pipeline alongside 50,000 square feet of new ground floor retail development. Beyond Market East proper, you also have a city-led effort around Market Street Old City improvement that's targeting traffic and mobility enhancements between 2nd and 6th Street that are due in 2026. Next slide. So this slide really speaks to the proposal itself. In terms of potential development by the Sixers are in partnership with Macerich for the Fashion District. They've assembled key parcels on the south side and on the 900 block and the 1000 block of Market Street. Their Market East development plan describes potential that's phased redevelopment, includes the first phase, which is slated to kick off in 2027. That's the arena site itself, 18,500 seats, including the south side of 1000 block of Market Street, which excludes the CVS parcel. That incorporates 453,000 square feet of total development, which also loops in 380 residential units and 28,000 square feet of retail, along with 127 parking spaces. The next phase, which is slated to kick off in 2030, is the south side of 900 block of Market Street. Similar size in development, but 433,450 square feet total development, increasing the residential unit count from the previous phase to 340 residential units, 26,000 square feet of retail, and 114 parking spaces. So in total with the arena, you're looking at an additional 54,000 square feet of retail, along with 720 residential units, and roughly 83,000 square feet of new parking, 241 spaces altogether. Next slide. So this slide itemizes the real planned development outside of the proposal. Other improvements slated on the horizon, another 600 plus residential units, 600 hotel beds, over 50,000 square feet of new ground floor retail, and also 700,000 square feet of office space. I want to note that that is dated on that's from a dated proposal from 2016, potentially at 13th and Market Streets. Next slide. So this big map shows how we beat the block at the mayor's request. We took a survey from City Hall all the way down to Penn's Landing, from here to the river. We looked at the development potential on an overall basis. It represents our collective consideration of past, present, and future development, quantified along Market Street from City Hall to the river again. What it does is it looks at the development that will be leveraged in not just Market East proper, but it also dovetails into the potential momentum in Old City itself, which incorporate Penn's Landing and, more importantly, the forthcoming I-95 cap. It maps not just the opportunities, but it also looks at the hotels and the parking and the plazas that provide all the amenity to support this kind of stuff. And the following slides are really going to be a block-by-block survey of the potential that we've made note of throughout this process. Next slide. So we start closest to City Hall. We think of the Wanamaker Building, Macy's. We also consider that one corner parcel that I just mentioned, 700 square feet of office tower that is planned, again, a dated proposal. However, more importantly, we have Macy's. We have the Wanamaker Building. That particular investment by TF Cornerstone, we paved the way for 600,000 square feet of office space. Off the corridor, we have what many know as the Fergie Tower at 1213 Walnut Street, excuse me. That's been completed, 322 units and 7,200 square feet of retail. Almost near completion, we have the Midwood on 12th Street, which is near completion. Even more units than the Fergie Tower, 378 units and 40,000 square feet of retail. Now, what the next slide shows is how we've looked at vacancy around these types of development opportunities. With the importance of a building like the Wanamaker, you wouldn't expect the concentration of vacancy that you have here, but it exists, particularly concentrated to the south side of Wanamaker along the 1300 block of Chestnut Street. I want to make a note that picture number 2 was West Elm just a year ago. You look at the opportunities that were in place about 2 years ago, 1 year ago, but you now have vacant storefronts. Number 5 particularly, that was the Wawa that we used to have. Next slide. We move further east to the 1200 blocks of Market, Filbert, and Chestnut Street, again, moving away from City Hall, away from the Wanamaker Building, but looking at conditions that we have around the Marriott. The Marriott, which has closed its doors to Market Street, a major hotel, major component of the corridor, but does not face a major corridor of the city of Philadelphia. It appears closed, but it's actually open, and that's why you see that kind of number 3 colored differently from the rest, because it's actually open. Similar case to number 4, which is our beloved Old Nelson's. It's been shuttered since the 2020 riots, and it has not opened up those windows ever since. Next slide. The 1100 block of Market Street is really where we saw the most significant of development in recent years. It's where National Real Estate has built the East Market project. It was completed, it's a multi-phase project, 126,000 square feet of retail, 175,000 square feet of Class A office space, 562 units added to the corridor. Below that deal, we have the 11th Street corridor, which is built a lot. Brickstone on the 1100 block of Chestnut Street. That is the Collins that was completed by Brickstone, completed with the assemblage of 6 parcels, 112 units, and 90,000 square feet of ground floor retail. Not too far from that is the Gray Star, which is Gray Star's project, the Jessup. It's something else that's near completion. An additional 399 units and 10,000 square feet of ground floor retail. We also have a development opportunity, which hasn't quite taken off, but it's the Bach development, which is approved. 198 units slated for the area, 6,200 square feet of offices, and 4,400 square feet of ground floor retail as well. Also worth noting on the map that the new Jefferson Tower was just built at 11th and Chestnut. Next slide. Moving to the survey of vacancy. Again, we have a big staple like East Market, but we have vacancies within that development. So we lost the Wawa at 13th and Chestnut, but we also lost the Wawa at 12th and Market as well. Significant investment went into that project. It is where we have installed the digital signage that you see in picture number 2. We have empty storefronts, not just the Wawa number 2, but you have the former District Taco that hung on for a little bit, but didn't quite make it at number 3. And more disappointingly, you have no Target at number 4 anymore. That is something that was impactful on that particular block, but again, it was just not, it wasn't a sustainable opportunity to keep that particular location there as stated by Target. Next slide. So now we get to the kind of center of what the proposal is on the 800, 900, and 1,000 blocks of Market and Chestnut Street. As proposed and shown a few slides ago, we have the Sixers have proposed a phase 1 slated to kick off in 2027. That's the arena site in the south side of the 1,000 block. And also phase 2, again, which is slated to kick off in 2030. But what we also have on the 800 block is a parcel that is earmarked for 420,000 square feet of development by the Goldenberg Group. They are looking at doing a hotel with 400 to 600 beds and approximately 45,000 square feet of retail. Again, looking at how we are possibly redoing that entire block with the exception of the courthouse, which is at the middle of all that. Next slide. Next, thank you. Did we hit advance? Sorry. So the existing conditions here really demonstrate again what we're looking to, what the Sixers are looking to develop here. It's a combination of control from the Sixers team and also the Goldenberg team as well. But if you move to the next slide, you really look at where the vacancies exist again. We have the heart of the development really at the center of where we have probably the most shuttered along Market Street at this point, the 1,000 block. These are former jewelry stores, GameStop, sneaker stores, but now you have, again, nothing there. You have a seasonal occupancy at number 7, which is Spirit Halloween, which is the former Rite Aid. But again, we know after Halloween, it won't be Spirit Halloween anymore. Next slide. Moving down to the 900 block, you start to see, again, more smaller lot sizes. But again, I want to point out number 5, which has been on the 800, number 5 on the 800 block. That was Century 21. After that, it was Shoppers World. And it's a very significantly sized piece, significantly sized space that's just vacant at this point. You look at number 1, there's a restaurant that came post-COVID but wasn't able to hang on. And then you look at number 7, which is the new spaces that were developed as a result of the outgoing or incoming fashion district, but again, not quite able to land a tenant. So we have, issues with occupying these spaces, and not just the old storefronts and dated storefronts, but even the new improvements as well. Next slide. Moving down to the 600 and 700 blocks, we have the Brickstone building the Litz building, which was developed most recently by the Brickstone Group. Also recently completed with 42,000 square feet of development, but over half of that is still available for sublease opportunities. The most significant investment in that particular parcel is from the Five Below team. Their current headquarters are in that building. To the south, you have the Pearl property development along Jewelers Row. It's a proposal that's went through a couple of iterations, but what we see here is the most latest iteration. Hasn't quite necessarily broken ground yet. If you move on to the next slide, you're highlighting, again, a very historic and important part of the corridor at the Litz building, 700 block of Market Street, but you have an issue, again, with ground floor vacancy. Number 2 was formerly a Citizens Bank at one point in time, but it lies empty right now. And even on the Mid-block location of the building itself, you have a empty storefront right alongside where the main entrance to the building is. To the south side of Market Street on the 700 and even the 600 blocks, you have some soft site opportunities. Soft site being not necessarily a proposal identified, but has the potential to be something and grow into something. Calling out the empty storefronts at 5, 6, and 7, which are right at the ground floor of an existing parking lot that's owned by Brandywine, but we're calling it out as a soft site opportunity because it's ripe for development, has the potential to be something else given its maximized zoning opportunity, and really could be something with the highest and best use that it allows. Next slide. So we're getting to the mall itself where Market East technically becomes Old City. It's important to know again that this really dovetails into what's going on the Old City side. Particularly on the 400 block, we have the potential soft site in the 101 North Independence Mall East. It's located at 5th and Market, the north side, northeast corner. We also, to the east of that, we have 399 Market. That's a space that was most recently upgraded to 136,000 square feet of office space. On the south side of the block, just alongside the Weissman Museum, we've planned conversions for the Bourse at the first floor. It'll be a food hall that is going to be an event venue. Above that, we'll have several floors of the building that'll be planned to be converted into a hotel with some office space if, in fact, that allows for on the upper remaining floors. Directly on Market Street, we have 400 Market Street. That's a planned conversion of the 173,000 square foot office building that is there. It will be swapped into potentially residential uses. Currently the zoning permits that have been approved for this allow for 176 residential units on site. Next slide. So again, we get to the end of the corridor and we're in Old City, and there's a lot on deck for Old City. Particularly, again, there is a group of Philadelphia-based led organizations which include not just DVRPC, but the Old City District itself, Independence Visitor Center, the Preservation Alliance, the Chinatown Development Corporation itself, and even the National Park Service. They're looking at proposing a new vision that will allow for this particular historical district to re-enhance itself, allow for new pedestrian and bike-friendly streets, plazas, green spaces, and basically bring that sense of cohesiveness that they say is currently lacking in that district. That's important because it's setting the stage for everything that's happening along the river, particularly the cap itself, and it's pretty much a direct connection. It will be pretty much an improved direct connection to Penn's Landing and everything along the river. Next slide. So I believe my colleague Andrew talked about the competing facilities already. If we can go to the next slide. And I believe my mayor talked about the WNBA already. So we'll go to the next slide. Thank you. I'll call up John Monlock to talk about sustainability.
Good evening. I'm John Monlock. I'm the Interim Director of Planning and Development. I'm here with Mike Carroll from our Office of Transportation Infrastructure and Systems. I'm just going to touch on a couple things, reiterate a couple points, and then I'll get into the list of ordinances and describe each one in detail. So with respect to sustainability, the Sixers have agreed to use commercially reasonable efforts to achieve a LEED Gold standard. Now, I will say that this was a really important thing for this administration. You've probably heard everybody talk about the greenest, cleanest city in Philadelphia, and this ties right into it, and the administration was adamant that we need to reach that level. It's also consistent with the obligations that we put upon ourselves when we're developing our own projects. So the vision for Chinatown is we need to create a continued vitality in Chinatown because we do have a treasured cultural asset. We need to keep it a community of choice. We have a jewel, and it's up to all of us to make sure that we preserve it. And we intend to do that, and some of the things that we're going to do are going to be outlined here. We learned from the reports that Chinatown already has some pre-existing challenges. They have challenges with affordability, commercial, residential, traffic, parking, safety, and we're also concerned because we learned from the reports of the possibility of additional heightened problems. And we need to address both of those, and by doing that, we're going to take the CBA and use that as seed money to leverage resources to make sure that we begin a master planning process that is both detailed and inclusive of community, Chinatown, and all stakeholders to make sure that we gather all the best information and come up with a comprehensive plan that we can work on going forward. Chinatown will include Chinatown residents, it'll include stakeholders, and it'll take into consideration both visitors from near and visitors from far. The vision, we have, again, $25 million that's targeted for the vicinity of the arena. There is another $25 million that the vicinity, the near neighbors can benefit from, but there's 25 directly targeted for this community, 97% of which are going to be funded within the first 10 years. And again, we want to avoid any displacement or disruption from construction, and we want to leverage it with the opportunities that are happening both in the arena and along Market Street. So we need to, when we do the master plan, this is where we gather everybody that's interested, that has resources, has the ability to help, has ideas, has an interest in the outcome, to come together to create all of our ideas collected in one place so that we can implement that. It must include properties that the city currently owns, because those are assets that can be put to use. It will include things like the Stitch, which already has $163 million dedicated to that project that covers over 676. And it will have to include things like Reading Viaduct, which is funded already at $3 million, with probably quite a bit more on the horizon, with a budget of at least $60 million that's also in the vicinity. We need to look at zoning. We need to see if there are overlays, height controls, or any tools in the zoning toolbox that can help preserve Chinatown and help it to thrive. We need to look for recreational space, and we need to look for a cultural center, because these are things that Chinatown has expressed a need for. We need to evaluate and look at the physical makeup of Chinatown, the streetscape. We need to look at things like landscaping and benches and any sort of physical improvement that we can do, like signage or wayfinding signs, anything to improve visitor experience and make the place as nice as it can be. And again, there's $6.6 million available for business support. Chinatown Business Lending, Business Disruption Fund, and an enhanced Power Up Your Business expansion. In addition to that, we're looking to raise an additional $10 to $15 million for the Chinatown Small Business Lending Fund. There's going to be $1 million to the Asian American Chamber of Commerce to prepare businesses for these opportunities. So when there's work that can be done, businesses are ready to go get that work. We hope, and we're going to seek to use local partners to implement this money, entities like the Asian Bank or the Chinatown Development Corporation. We also need to explore and try to find ways to make businesses and residential offerings affordable and keep them affordable. And we need to address parking and traffic, which Mike will address briefly.
So Mayor Parker expressed very eloquently her commitment to protect neighborhoods in this process, not the least of which is Chinatown, and the protections will be very much focused on things that affect people's quality of life, especially traffic and parking. Building this arena will be the culmination of a master planning process and the implementation of that process. And with that in mind, this administration, working in partnership with PPA, will survey both on and off-street parking in the area with the idea of exploring potential for new structures and new parking opportunities. This will include, most likely, a parking validation program for Chinatown residents and small businesses, and working with the Streets Department, which has the authority to regulate parking in ways that deter parking in these neighborhoods for event goers without undermining the residents' needs and businesses' needs. And this will likely mean truncating the hours that are available for parking, so people can't just park in these neighborhoods leave their car, go see an event, come back, and go away. That will be enforced against, and the regulations will be designed to prevent that type of thing. As part of this process, we will also be looking at the analysis to make sure that we have actionable improvements we can take for safe streets. So recognizing that not just for event goers, but for everybody in these communities, we need to make sure that we're addressing the lane configurations to reduce congestion. We're looking for ways to make pedestrians safer and to make these networks more efficient. It was mentioned before, the community benefit agreement will include a direct allocation to subsidize and incentivize public transit use so that we can get towards the 40% that we know we need in order to be at or below in terms of the share of attendees who are driving by private vehicles, and that's how we're going to make this work. The idea is to steer traffic away from the neighborhoods, away from Chinatown, through wayfinding and active management to eliminate the congestion folks have been worried about.
As mentioned earlier, there's going to be $3 million in the CBA for supportive of affordable housing. Construction of new, preservation of existing, and that number is not going to solve the affordability problem in Chinatown, but it's a very good start, and it's important to keep in mind that the city is working on a much bigger plan to be announced in the future that will be all-encompassing of affordable housing, and that will be there'll be pinpoint focus within that program on the vicinity of this arena. We also need to look at city parcels to see how we can implement those into solving many of the problems that I just mentioned. And we need to complete, we're very close to it, but we need to complete the audit that we're doing of all existing affordable that are maybe coming out of their compliance period, because we need to ensure that they continue and remain affordable. Regarding public safety, you've heard that there's over $4 million for public safety, including 21 new cameras, new lighting at 4 different locations, and a substation that will be occupied by not just police department, but also SEPTA's police and the Center City District Security, as well as Jefferson Security. And as we'll describe a little bit later, there'll be a traffic event management plan. Regarding clean and green, there's going to be an additional $1.25 million to make sure that taking care of business helps clean and beautify. We're going to be looking at programs that clean sidewalks, power wash, trash collection, to look for anything that needs to be enhanced. And as I said earlier, we're going to be looking to streetscapes and landscapes to make any improvements that we can to make sure that it's as inviting a place that it can be. Now, moving to the ordinances, the ordinance package, the legislative package includes 11 ordinances and resolutions. There's actually 9 ordinances, 2 resolutions, and the 2 resolutions tie directly to a specific ordinance. So there's really about 9 items that I'm going to talk through quickly. We already talked about the transaction ordinance, so I'm not going to get into the flow of real estate, but that is one of the main ordinances. And for those that are most interested in seeing what is the essence of the deal, the term sheet attached to that ordinance, which again is already posted, that's where you want to go for those details. And so we have the transaction ordinance. The one thing I'll add to is what's really important, and it's contained in there, is there is going to be an obligation to keep the doors of this building open when there's no events going on. And there needs to be a connection from Market Street back to Filbert Street. As you saw on the map, Filbert Street is in the path of this development, but a public easement will remain through Filbert Street. So you can enter on 10th and go to 11th or vice versa, and you can also connect out to Market Street. So that network of pedestrian walkways will remain open even when there is no event in the arena. And that's really important. And the other thing that's really important, and it's spelled out in the agreement, is, and the Sixers fully understand this, but we all have to work together to make sure this happens. This space needs to be inviting, it needs to be exciting, it needs to be a place that people want to go in. Even if you're not staying, even if it's just to take a couple pictures and move on. We don't want what I've seen when I went to DC, when the event was not happening, you have locked doors, there's no reason to go in, nobody wants to, you don't even want to walk on the same side of the street. We want to create the opposite. We want to make this a destination of sorts, like a lot of other public spaces that we have in the city, whether it's Wanamaker's or Comcast or any places like that. And so again, to see the essence of the deal, I would look to the term sheet. That's one of the ordinances. The other ordinance is enabling PAID to be a transaction partner in this. That's the second one. There's an ordinance pertaining to a TIF, a tax incremental financing district, and an ordinance related to a NID, a neighborhood improvement district, and there's a corresponding resolution that goes with those. The mall currently has a tax incremental financing district over it, as well as a neighborhood improvement district. It was done to create the mall that we have now, and it is not contemplating an arena. And so we need to peel that back, and so we need to make that TIF and that NID shorter. That's what those two bills do, is they take the arena parcel out of the TIF, out of the NID. We have two zoning bills. One pertains to the site itself that allows for the building, if anybody has seen the image, it allows for that building to be constructed. It creates a master plan, it states what can be done in that parcel, and spells out the project that they're going to build essentially with words. There's also a bill that makes some modifications to the Market Street East Advertising District, which does not increase the allowable signs in that district, although the arena itself does have an increase in allowable signs. The Market Street East District are smaller changes around building heights and frontages, but it doesn't increase the total advertising space that each linear square foot has. There are three streets ordinances, 2 street strikings. Mention Filbert Street, it'll no longer be on the city plan. That property will revert to the adjacent property owners. And the bridge that goes over 10th Street is currently part of the mall. That will be demolished, and a new glass structure will be put in its place that's taller than the existing structure, and so we need to strike a portion of that street up in the air above the existing mall walkway. And there's one other streets bill that is a encroachment ordinance that mostly allows for the security bollards that are required by the NBA and any other street furniture, whether it's wayfinding signs or a bike rack or anything that's in the right-of-way has to be improved in there. And Mike is now going to talk about additional approvals that are going to be required.
Thank you. So once the ordinances have gone through City Council, there's no special path in place for this development to get its permits for construction and to be completed. The path that we take involves getting your building permits, also submitting a maintenance and protection of traffic plan. We've heard a lot of people's concerns about what construction will be like. That plan will be reviewed by PennDOT, it will be reviewed by the city, and we will also work with our other partners to get input on the implementation of that plan. The expectation is that there will be no continuous long-term closures of city streets as part of that plan. There will be some submissions, of course, for closures of sidewalks, traffic lanes, and parking lane closures. We will review them, we will comment on them, and we will expect the comments to be addressed in any plan before construction begins. This will also be submitted to the Art Commission for approval, and they will expect to see a public fine arts plan, as well as the Federal Transit Administration, which will weigh in to ensure that they can approve any changes to the physical layout of Jefferson Station. In addition to this, as part of the review process, the Sixers are required to both finalize and maintain on an ongoing basis a traffic event management plan, as several other speakers have mentioned. This will incorporate feedback from all the public partners involved, foremost the city, of course, SEPTA as well, and PennDOT. This is a requirement of the permits that are needed for access and use of the public right-of-way. The traffic event management plan will be based on our best understanding of the information in the traffic impact study, but it will be maintained on an ongoing basis on with at least an annual update, given the usage that we see at that point in time. That will include background conditions, so things like the availability of parking on-site and off-site as those evolve over time, as well as what we see with other background developments that may change traffic patterns in the area. The goal is to make sure that we can keep track of congestion, any impacts, but in particular the actual mode share, which is so important to making sure that this venue is a success and that the impacts to neighboring communities is minimized. We will continuously look to adopt strategies that reduce the share of attendees below this threshold of 40% people arriving by private vehicles. We'll also be looking at how travel to and from and within this facility meets federal law with respect to the Americans with Disability Act's ADA compliance, and that we mitigate any impacts collectively of non-compliance. This is going to be a living document, but also it's going to depend heavily on the way we manage in real time. The Sixers plan will incorporate staffing, which will include overtime for the Philadelphia Police Department, and the overall management of this area will be under the jurisdiction of the Philadelphia Police on game day or during events.
So listen, for those people, and I see the crowd getting thin, but for those of you, and listen, I get it, but for those of you who are in the comforts of your own home and/or office and you are watching, it is essential that we walk through every detail that is associated with this agreement so that everyone has a clear understanding. Before we go any further, JLL, I know you're coming, but is the Parker administration executives, are they amazing or what? Give them a round of applause, please. I'm telling you, I just got to say it. Tiffany Thurman, my chief of staff, and so she and Sophie handles all of our policy and strategic planning. They've been joined at the hip from the time we got started with this. I'm so grateful to both of you for everything. We got the best finance guys, Sam Rhodes and Rob Dubois. Give them a round of applause. If you all see these charts, I was meeting with somebody. You can't make this stuff up. If you look at these charts that are behind me, somebody was trying to, you know, we're learning each other because we're new and we just started working together. They tried to bring me pages and pages. I said, wait a minute. You better find a way to bring me a SAM chart. A comparison chart. And because why? Because I didn't want anyone to be able to think that we were trying to filter any information about this current agreement and past agreements with the city. I wanted every Philadelphian to be able to digest it, and we thank you so much for that. In addition to that, Nicole Stokes, Denise Bailey, Michelle Gums, Marla Hamilton, Aisha Herring, and Lynn Newsom, you rock! All of you, thank you all so much. Jesse Lawrence and Beyond the Basketball with that develop. He's a master, right? I know, he's awesome. John Mondlak and Mike Carl, thank you. The legislative, the traffic piece. But let me tell you about my city solicitor. You can't make this up. Number one, neither one of us should be here right now. But I called her tonight. I said, Renee, you got to be there with me. We feeling the same, but let's go. I won't tell you where, because the people didn't have to invite us to come. But we did a whole lot of traveling in preparation to be prepared for these negotiations, in essence. And we saw what a whole lot of people did in a whole lot of other cities. And I remember coming back from one city in particular, and we won't name it, but because they didn't have to share. And I said, Renee, you are not going to believe what happened. We met with executives from that location, and then we met with members of the community in that area. And when they described the horror stories of what happened because their CBA was not codified into law, I got on that phone. I said, Renee, whatever we have to do, however we have to do it, we have to make sure our community benefits agreement is codified, and it has to have some enforcement teeth, and our city solicitor did it. Andrew, where are you? Andrew, we learned each other. It's important that you know who was responsible for making sure this happened. Now we're going to hear from it. This is important too. JLL. We weren't going to just evaluate ourselves. We needed to know how we measured, and we needed a third-party expert to affirm where we were. And that's where I remember calling Tiffany and I said, where's the third-party independent validator coming from who doesn't work for the city of Philadelphia? Because you can't evaluate yourself and give yourself an A+. That doesn't matter. Who's going to evaluate you? And we found one of the best in the business, JLL. Come on up and let us know what you found.
Thanks, Mayor. Just want to say a couple of things. Aaron Tucker and I are here, both from JLL, and we'll talk a little bit about our findings. But let me start with sort of the landscape of what we did. We looked at 19 specific agreements that tied to large projects, large sports-related projects. And within the 19, if you look at the last 10 years of basketball-related projects, we looked at all of them. So we tried to understand, and it's interesting because the EOP team already alluded to this in some of the things they talked about, because what was interesting in our process was what was really publicly available. So what was accessible for us to be able to just go right in and say, let's see the results of a particular project when it came to the goals that were set by their CBA. Almost to a city, it wasn't easy. So all the things that were talked about tonight about how things are going to be posted, how they're going to be reported, how we will have access to that, I can tell you on behalf of the 6-person research team at JLL, it wasn't easy when it came to information that we were able to find as we did the research. What we were able to, through the 19 projects that we reviewed, we were able to find 64 specific initiatives that were being, if you will, committed to in respective CBAs. So we were able to at least get a good landscape of what was out there. And here's our first finding when we did that. And everybody kind of remembers this was an iterative process with the mayor's team as we went through this. There was no agreement that we found of the 19 that was as comprehensive as ours. So and the reason I think for us to come up at this point with everything you've heard tonight, if you listed everything you heard as a benefit or an outcome or a goal of the CBA, there was none that got really close to the number of initiatives and the impact that we are trying to make. So that was the first key finding. The second one, we had a great conversation about this. This was, by the way, this was somewhat of an iterative process, so we were able to talk about findings as they were surfacing, and that is many of the agreements obviously had goals related to participation, whether it was employment or contracting. There were goals. There were goals that were set. We're going to talk a second about another comment that your EOP team said about the likelihood of those goals actually being achieved, but we'll get back to this. But so they all had goals, and they all had different percentages that they were contemplating or speculating based on their EOPs and their community benefit, if you will, their structures. But here's what none of them had compared to what ours is they didn't break down the levels of employment, the type of employment, the type of contracting that is that you heard today from the EOP team. So ultimately, you can see in our work that you'll see goals around percentage of what they were trying to achieve, but what you won't hear that is in this agreement is the notion of placing or recruiting diverse employees in the categories that are contemplated here. So from management all the way through to the key line positions, we didn't find one that speculated that level of, if you will, detail and commitment in terms of the 19 agreements or the information that we were able to source. So that was a feature that we have here that we couldn't find in any others. The other piece that was mentioned tonight we looked at carefully because as our team really got deeply into this, we realized that it wasn't just about the numbers or it wasn't just about the initiatives, it was about the structure. So how did the respective cities structure their approach to achievement? So what programs were in place that were essentially designed not only to, at point of employment or at point of contracting, talk about how they did, but what was in place to get them from point A to point B? And that's where the comment that the EOPT made about actual success, that was another piece that we couldn't find in our studies of the 19 areas. We did have some interviews, we had different ways we tried to find. We couldn't find anything that was structured to the level that we are here in terms of how we're going to prepare both workforce and contractors and others to not only be part of an RFP process, but be ready to participate in those processes. We didn't find any that compared to what we were talking about here. Here's a case in point, and I think the mayor said we're not supposed to talk about other cities, so I won't name the city, okay? But it's a great city, and there's wonderful people, and this just came out recently, and this is data that related to a project that is 5 years old. So it took that long, probably through some sort of community action, to find out that this great city wasn't able to achieve their local participation in terms of employment at their particular professional sports facility. 5 years later, right? We're going to know almost on a monthly basis, how we're doing. We couldn't find in our research any ability to get the type of data that would have shown how we were doing in any other city. So again, back to reporting and back to structure. And we looked, just so you know, so this was an objective research-based approach. So we really tried to find these type of things. We couldn't find anything that we thought was, was comparative to what is being proposed here. The other piece I want to stress again here is this issue of creating pathways. So we tried to find programmatic approaches to pathways because one of the things that we do as a firm is we are involved in this type of work in terms of contracting and development. So we said, because we've seen ourselves situations where a employer will say, well, we did everything we could do, right? So we posted, we made sure everybody knew, and we just didn't get the response. So therefore, we did our part. So we were focused on how were others creating pathways from the point the agreements were signed to the point the opportunities were going to be made available, and we just couldn't also find some of the pathways. You talked about some of the organizations, the chambers, and how everybody's going to get involved sort of today in terms of how we prepare the targeted businesses or targeted future employee leaders. We just couldn't find anything that substantially compared to what has been proposed today. So this creating the pathway piece we also thought was superior when it came to what we found with the other 19 that we studied. So we want to leave you with this thought, and I want to turn it over to Aaron to sort of talk about an observation also related to this whole process, but we leave you with a couple other thoughts here. Again, of the 19 cities, we did not see any where there was this delineation that we talked about earlier, about not just sort of broad-based, some way to sort of characterize construction. Those of you that have been around development, you've seen situations where somehow we find sort of laborers or subcontractors that somehow miraculously we try to use that as the way we've met targets. Nothing that was specific to the types of trades and the types of things we're talking about here. And I just want to reiterate one more time, we didn't see anything, and we actually think, and we can say this now that the process is over, that this notion of trying to recruit employees and future leaders, the way we're talking about it in the categories that are contemplated here, second to none. Not just in terms of comparable large projects, but really if you think about any type of agreements that are out here, that type of recruitment, because each one of those employee classifications have their own recruitment strategies. So it's not a singular strategy for how that's going to be accomplished, and we think, and again, we didn't see any that were comparable, but we think it's more than just better. It's progressive in terms of the approach here. So one of the fun things about a project like this is you get to bring minds that get to join the JLL team, and one of those minds is Dr. Erin Tucker. She's an associate professor at the Hospitality Tourism Management Program at the University of Maryland, and I'm going to turn it over to Erin. She really wants to sort of think about all of this and talk about sort of final thoughts here. We also were honored to have Dr. Brian Barker with us, also on our team from NYU, as well as the 6 researchers from JLL. So Erin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Dan. Upon examination of the 19 CBA agreements that we looked at, as well as EOPs, we realized is that it is not as simple as simply numbers. The key from our experiences, from my experiences working with small businesses, with organizations, is that what we need is a structure. We have to have an infrastructure that is in place for the community. The mayor charged us with one principle of many, but her principle specifically on looking at every resident and business from historically disadvantaged backgrounds, the ability to bid on contracts and opportunities. Why that is important is because, for one, we need to look at having a level of an accelerator program for our businesses that are in place. Our businesses that are about 3 years old are in a very good position to grow and scale, and this project can do that. But we have to put together an accelerator to do that. We have to put together a skills training program that is about upskilling, not just new skills, but upskilling our workforce and the projects that we need. Also, one of the areas that we saw within this project that we did not see in any of the other projects is the focus on citywide. It is not only important to focus on where the particular business is, but this constant understanding and a viewpoint and a vision of a citywide plan. Therefore, we need to charge ourselves. We need to look at ourselves to incorporate what is called an ecosystem approach. We need to look at recommendations that incorporate our local communities. Once again, our education systems bringing together a skill sets, various skill sets. We need to look at both, of course, the operations that we mentioned, as well as the construction, and even, as previously mentioned, placemaking. The Parker administration set the charge, did the work, and brought in knowledge and research. It is now our opportunity to work together in building an ecosystem that is in sync, united, and together. Thank you.
So Philadelphia, full confession, when we asked JLL to help us and we finally realized we would be working with them, when you say, at first you say, well, how do we measure up? How do we compare to other people? Until the work is being done and then you're waiting for the results to come back. And I was like, whoa, nervous, like, wait, what are they gonna come back and say and how are we faring? But we're so very grateful that you could use your global perspective to help inform our work. So thank you, give them a huge round of applause. I wanted to say this until last, and I wanted these comments to sort of close me out, because you're going to hear from the people who matter most, who will be impacted by all of the programs and the job creation and everything that's included in this agreement. I want to say this to you because I've heard a lot of the noise surrounding this agreement. I want to be very clear. We wouldn't be where we are right now had the Philadelphia 76ers not said that Philadelphia is our home and this is where we want to be. Give our Sixers a round of applause. In addition to that, I want to be very clear about this, because I can't print paper Philadelphia, and again, I can't respond to everything that I see and hear someone shares with me that's on social media, but I do want to be clear about this. We would not be where we are right now had we not had a willing partner. The Philadelphia 76ers came to the table. You know your mayor by now. It is a business, but they did not have to be here. And they chose to work with us to have remained here, so that's not lost on me. But this is what's also very important. Anyone who has any challenges with what is contained in this agreement, you no longer have the Philadelphia 76ers as the villain here. I am Cherelle L. Parker. I am the 100th mayor of the city of Philadelphia. I am proud and take full responsibility for what is included in this agreement, and I look forward to the legislative process and how it moves forward. I don't want you to think that I'm running or shirking away from anything that's in this agreement. I support it 1,001%. And I want to say this to our first speaker who's about to come. I met him a couple of years ago. I think, was it COVID, or we were just coming out of COVID, Pastor Mason. He's going to be one of our first stakeholders we hear from the black clergy. Give Pastor Mason a huge round of applause as he comes forward.
Good evening. I know we've been here a minute, but I'd be remiss if I did not take a moment to say that I want to celebrate our dynamic mayor of the city of Philadelphia, Mayor Cherelle Parker. Now, if I was at my church, I'd say y'all can do better than that. Let's celebrate Mayor Parker for the work that she has done. I also want to take this opportunity to celebrate the Philadelphia 76ers, because they took the proactive step of reaching out to the interfaith community to find ways that we could work together and to find opportunities for partnership, and they should be commended for that. I'm like my partner, I really do believe in beyond basketball. I was way too big a long time ago to play basketball. So I'm focused on beyond basketball. And when I think about what's in this proposal and how faith-based leaders will benefit, it is a proposal that's going to bring benefits and added value to our young people right now, and they need it right now. And I've always said that until all of our young people have a seat at the table of success, none of us have a seat at the table of success. So I thank the Parker administration and the Sixers for making sure that this package will benefit our young people. Lastly, because of Mayor Parker, I serve as on the Board of Trustees for the Community College of Philadelphia. And this project, the community college, will spearhead the community college for municipal employment. And this provides a pipeline for jobs and careers for the students who have trusted us with their education, a great added value. So in summary, this is a great program for Philadelphia. It's a great program for small business. It's a great program for the interfaith community and our young people. We need to get behind it and support our mayor. Thank you very much.
We are now going to hear from Kathy Hicks from the NAACP, and then after Kathy, we will hear from Ed Gross. Kathy and then Ed, if he's still here. Okay.
Good evening, good evening. I tell you, I am so excited. I'm excited about Philadelphia. I'm excited about this project. I'm just so, I have to applaud the mayor and her team for this dynamic information that she put up, because this really dispels a lot of the rumors and a lot of the misinformation that has gone out about this project. And I just want to say thank you to our mayor. Thank you, Mayor Cherelle Parker, for supporting 76th Place at Market East. As an early supporter, the Philadelphia branch NAACP had the opportunity to meet with the 76ers, their organization, and they gave us this vision of what Philadelphia could have, along with having our team, the 76ers, here. So, I mean, this is just an opportunity that we cannot pass up. We can't pass this up, because the 76ers, that's our team. We're all Philadelphians, and we want to be able to expand. We want to be able to give our communities what they need. The NAACP Philadelphia branch applauds your strong leadership and engagement process and the willingness to consider all sides of a challenging issue. The opportunity to have a center city arena housing our beloved Philadelphia 76ers will potentially bring economic benefits through jobs, entrepreneurship, housing, building trades, and other opportunities to the Philadelphia's diverse communities. The NAACP has been on the forefront since its inception, fighting for economic development and wealth for people of color and our marginalized communities. We will stand with you and the 76ers Corporation throughout the entire approval process to ensure the city will have more ways to address persistent poverty, levels of revitalization, post-pandemic Market East, and attract more resources to strengthen Philadelphia's future. To be a one Philly, all united city, we must make sure all are included in the city's economic future plans. Let's support this endeavor. Thank you.
All right, I know we've been here a while, so I'll be quick. My name is Ed Gross. I'm the Executive Director of the Greater Philadelphia Hotel Association.